And welcome to What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. This is LaGuardia's Radio, WLGR. And this is the second show today on May 26th, special show, special time. I've invited here and I've written all down, so I get it all right. My guest today is Deema Bayrakdar, who's the director of the Women's Center and the LGBTQIA Safe Zone Hub in the Division of Student Affairs, and she's brought along one of her students, Natalie Sanchez, who is taking advantage of the center and the hub. Say hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi. So, Deema, I somehow I feel like I didn't get your last name right at the end there. Bayrakdar. I did it right.
That was perfect. Bayrakdar. Yeah, you got it.
That's the toughest part about this show. Before we get started, I just want to, I asked, they used to call me Mr. Simple in poetry class, but I'm going to have to help me out. So I get LGBTQ, I'm fine. I and A are those last two initials on the hub. Excuse me, in the hub stand for.
So intersex and asexual.
Okay, very good. So I get it all right. I didn't want to play dumb for the whole show. But anyhow, so I talked a little bit about our format. So I'd like to start out by finding a little bit about our guests. Would the two of you like to talk a little bit about your backgrounds, and in your case, Deema, I would say some of your studies and before, pre either at or pre LaGuardia. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So I have a background in English and art history and fine art. I pursued a teaching degree. I did the New York City Teaching Fellows over 10 years ago. So I taught a little bit of high school English and humanities. I went back to school and studied textile design for a while. I most recently, in the last few years, realized I was really interested in mental health and counseling and human behavior. So I went back to school and I received a degree in mental health counseling at Hunter just last year.
Very good. And are you a native New Yorker?
No, I'm originally from Rock Island, Illinois. So
that's right. We talked about that. The Rock.
The Rock, exactly.
Rock Island line is a mighty good line.
That's right on the Mississippi River. I was right on the border with Iowa. Actually, I did all my schooling before college was actually in Iowa. So I crossed the river every day. And then after high school, I moved to D.C., Washington, D.C., and I was there for 5 years, and then London for a bit, and then Chicago for 3 years, and New York.
You've had quite a life, huh?
Yeah, moved around a bit, yeah. But here for about 16 years, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Natalie, you want to talk a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I came to LaGuardia for the vet tech program, but my interest definitely shifted toward biology. So I switched my major to biology, and that's what I'm currently studying. I have 1 or 2 more semesters to go.
Right. Do you know what your next steps are as well?
I definitely want to transfer to a 4-year and CUNY, like a CUNY 4-year. So all those credits will transfer and I don't have to worry about that.
You should go talk to my friends in the transfer services office, Renee Freeman Butler and Jose Plasencia. I don't know if Jose's good man to talk to about that. Let's talk a little bit about coming to LaGuardia. Deema, you want to talk a little bit about that, like how you ended up here? And you told me you've been here for 10 years too. So talk a little bit about your time here.
Sure. Actually, since 2009. So at the time, around the time of the recession, I was just ending my kind of foray in textile design, and I was having, some difficulty finding work there. So I went back to my roots in teaching, and a friend of mine at the time, Mark Trzaskowski, he connected me to the Adult Learning Center back in 2009. And so that's when I met Ellen Quish and Marjana Bugay and May Dick at the time. And I was just teaching English. adult literacy, and then I shifted into what is now CUNY Start, right? It was a tiny grassroots program of like 30 students offering an alternative to remediation. At the time, it was CTI. So I ran CUNY Start kind of like in the early stages up through, what was it, 2015, maybe? Yeah. And then at the time, Vice President Baston, he had a grant program called Road to Success that came to fruition. That was through the Goldman Sachs grant. And so I ran that program, which was like a tier-based program connecting students to different kinds of advisement based on need. So we were working with peer advisors, faculty advisors, the professional advisors. And so that was for about 2 years or so. And then that sort of morphed into like this early stages of Advisement 2.0, right? Which, kind of connects students to different advisors on campus. So I was running an area called Advising Operations up until the end of 2019. Yeah. And then I transitioned into this role at the end of 2019.
Yeah. By the way, I was going to say, there's a little clicking sound, and I think it's coming from your earrings hitting the headphones. I'm not sure if that's the case, but
you know what? I'm committed I'm committed to accessories even though we're staying at home. Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it's
for danglies. She loves dangly earrings.
Big part of my personality, but I've taken them off.
Oh, thank you very much for doing that. It sounds like it's kind of interesting how it sounds like you were riding some sort of wave of different stuff through adult continuing ed, but then obviously I think it sounds like you moved into with the degree seeking, right? By the time you were at advisement, something like that, through student affairs. So that's interesting. Natalie, you want to talk about how you ended up coming to LaGuardia, given the fact that you were a Brooklyn student, but I guess Kingsborough is probably the same equidistance from certain parts of Brooklyn, right? I mean, we're actually closer to Brooklyn, for example, the north, than necessarily Kingsborough would be if you're like, say you lived in Greenpoint.
I was definitely closer to Kingsborough, like 20-minute bus ride away.
Right.
But I decided on LaGuardia for the vet tech program.
Oh, that's right. I think it's the only one, right, in CUNY?
Definitely one of the few. Yeah.
And they're very successful, particularly in placement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very strict.
What happened? When did you say? Did you move in? Usually, because a lot of times people start with a program like biology. I don't want to say it's but it's a bigger program, and then they get focused in on a specific like vet tech. So you actually went the other way. What happened?
I took the vet tech class and it was really, really interesting, but I found that it wasn't for me. And I started exploring other things. I found biology and I was like, wow, this is very interesting. I think I want to just continue learning about this. And then I switched my major. I started getting classes about it and it felt like the right decision for me.
Very good. Sorry, I was checking my phone because I get little messages from Jamie Riccio, who's watching the stream, but that one wasn't from her. That's a student concerned about finals. Anyhow, I'm trying to think of the folks in biology. Tom Honoranto, is that one of the Cell Talks, which I've always I can't remember whether he does those as talks, but I've always would love to get him on and talk about it. And I also know Dr. Fuentes, who are working on developing lab manuals through OER lab manuals for students to work with. Those names don't.
Thomas, I've spoken with him once. He's helped me figure out what classes I'm going to take if I want to graduate.
We're right next to each other, like the fine art area and that area. And so we've gone through this. Let's move into. Let's talk a little bit about the center. Broad strokes. So, I mean, I know the center through Joanna De Leon, who was running for a while, and also Vanessa Bing, who was a faculty mentor, and I've had various the state. In fact, the station is actually right across a hall from you guys, or the terrestrial station. This obviously we're running from home at this point. And I've done various activities with them. I did probably the last thing I ever did with them is we had some sort of male feminist faculty speak, and there was like a little panel, and we were asked questions, and that was the last time. I wasn't invited back after that. I think, as I remember myself, I was the utopian kind of belligerent one in the crowd, where I had I had like certain, and then there were other folks in the crowd who were realists, and they were whatever you want to call it, and we didn't get along. It was almost like a brawl broke out between the feminist male faculty. But so I haven't been engaging with the Women's Center, but tell us a little bit about the center.
Sure. I mean, I think that, we really are committed to right now, like 4 areas of service. And, when I came on board, the idea of support circles was the 4. Well, let me take a step back. So we were interested in offering, like, being a space for, women and the LGBTQIA population in terms of referrals and resources. So really being a connector for students to really develop different events and programs, and then also the support circles. And so, but before launching any of this, it was really important for me to understand, okay, what is the student need? What is it that students are seeking at this time? What kinds of supports? I just felt like I felt that, in order to operate effectively and meaningfully, we needed to understand the need, and that should really drive our programming. So I launched a survey back in February, I want to say, and over 500 students responded. And it was also a collaboration with the Wellness Center so there were in the areas of, questions about anxiety, depression, social anxiety, isolation. I mean, this was all before quarantine, questioning gender, questioning sexuality. And more than 500 students responded to that survey. It had a really big turnout. And there was and so we kind of got the results at the beginning of March, right? And it was like, okay, we gotta run these circles. And it was really important for me for this to be a cross-divisional collaboration. So I reached out to faculty and staff across the entire college about, running these circles together. And then quarantine hit, and there was actually an uptick in the interest. And I felt more than ever, right? Like, people are seeking to connect, and we have to offer this. It's part of our innate nature, right? Especially during this time where we're being asked to isolate. So yeah, we've been running 8 circles consistently since April 6th. And yeah.
But you talk about the circles now. Is each circle focused on a particular topic, or is it, people just show up and they have an issue and that's what the focus is? How does it work?
Absolutely. So just to take a step back, I learned about circle practice through trauma training that I'm finishing up. It's learning how to become like a trauma-informed therapist. And so each circle has a different theme. There's always an opener and a closer to contain the space. So we have themes such as grief and recent loss, stress and overwhelm. We're doing a healthy relationship series right now with SAVI, which is the Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Program at Mount Sinai. We have a circle on mindfulness and self-care, exploring racial, ethnic, sexual, and gender identity, which I'm doing with the current liaison, Harabastas, which has been awesome. Healthy eating and
faculty council.
Healthy eating and body image with health services, then social isolation, loneliness, and anxiety, and then Mom Power, which is a collaboration also with Lisa Silverman in the social sciences department. And proud to say that I have co-leads from all the different divisions, which has really been awesome.
How did you find these people I guess you're saying you sent out an email, and I don't know that, I usually read all my emails, but maybe I passed on this one because I didn't think I had anything to offer at the time. But is that how it worked? You just sent out faculty wide or college wide, and people just stepped up?
Yeah. I mean, people responded and they were like, "Oh, well, like, what are the qualifications and how can I do this?" And it's really, I mean, I just really wanted to, in its simplest form, what we're doing here is we're offering space for students to express, connect, build community. That's it, right? These aren't clinical circles, and to get support from one another. And so, it's very simple. I have a template that I put up on my screen, just that talks about kind of the parameters of circle practice, how it works, the purpose. There's an opener, and then, folks, we go in a circle, right? Where people share whatever is floating to the surface for them. And maybe Natalie can speak to this, but often students will be like, "Wait, what's the question? Wait, what are we talking about?" And it's really just about, listening and responding and offering support. And, during a time when, it's really tough to connect.
You're good. You're doing my job. Let's bring Natalie into this. You've been listening quietly. I guess my question to you, Natalie, is, and I don't know what happened, Deema. I lost her video. Did you deliberately turn off your video, Deema?
No, I'm here.
You're there?
Yeah.
Oh, because on my screen I don't see you. I just see your initials. But she's good, Chris is telling me. I finally figured out how to read the chat without having to read the chat. But Natalie, how did you end up coming to the Women's Center, the hub, the center and the hub, and taking advantage of it? Because we still haven't differentiated between the two, because it serves multi-purposes, and so there's another one there. So talk about that, coming to the center.
So I've heard about the Women's Center when I was in LaGuardia in my first year seminar. We were going around looking at all the offices, and it really interested me, but I guess I kind of held myself back from going. I don't know why. And then, all this happened. We're at home. It's been 2 to 3 months now, but last month I got a text from LaGuardia, and it was something along the lines of, how have you been feeling? Do you want to talk it out? And then there was a link, and there was a list of a bunch of different circles. And I was like, wow, I want to just join all of them. But my schedule only allowed me to join one. And I made sure that I went to every single one of them. So the first one I went to, I've never experienced anything like it. It was very open and accepting. And it was just flowing between the students that were in there. I was definitely shy. I told myself, okay, maybe I just won't talk the entire time. But it was very, again, open, and listening to everyone's perspectives and their ideas, how they felt. It gave me comfort to know that, okay, I'm not the only one feeling this way.
Deema, the text that she received, so basically the college sent those out to anybody who basically identifies female, or did it go out to everybody? I mean,
this was a broad initiative. This, like, once I sent out that survey, right, I did get like a list of 500 students who I then followed up with. We followed up with them via email. They received text messages about the circle. So we sent it to everybody. We didn't just isolate, individuals who identify as women. We did have a circle focusing just on sexual identity and gender identity. And this has just been one big old experiment too, and just kind of seeing like, where are students showing up. That one did not get as much traction. So we combined it with racial and ethnic identity. And we have had, a few students who have regularly shown up there. But it hasn't, I think, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but for session 2, I think we might have I mean, right now we have the mom power, right? So that's specifically for mothers. But during session 2, I might run like more open circles. One that is, for individuals who identify as women, and one that's more LGBTQ focused as well.
When you mentioned moms, I started thinking like moms typically need the support. The question is, do moms have the time to get it? And because I have a lot of students who struggle with being in class and taking care of their children, not to mention if they have children of school age, who they then have to actually, be the teacher at times. But this is running synchronously, right? Because in order to be heard, people have to be listening to you while you're speaking. So how did you, what are we looking at in times as far as when these sessions meet, that for availability purposes?
Right. So they are 1-hour sessions. We usually wind down at like the 45-minute mark. And they are every day we're running circles. Some days I have, there are days where I'm running 2 circles a day. But there's an offering every day. It seems like the 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 blocks are the most available for students. And
I would think Wednesday from 2 to 4, which is the old club hours.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still, because they're not honored as much by academic affairs. There's a lot of courses that get scheduled during those times, but
I found Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, we have the greatest show rate. Although Monday's stress and overwhelm lately we've had more students show up.
Tell me about dress and overwhelm. What's
that?
No,
one? Stress
and being overwhelmed.
Yeah. So an opener for that one might be something like, so we always like in the opener, I ask students, everyone to introduce themselves. They're welcome to have video on or video off, really up to them. But an example of an opening question might be, so what's been really challenging this week and what's getting you through? And I think I try to, let's honor and name the challenges and the stressors, and let's really talk about the resources, the inner and outer resources that are helping us through. I think vocalizing them, hearing them, and hearing your peers talk about them, it can offer comfort and a way for folks to acknowledge, like, hey, you're doing stuff to get through this time.
Right.
Let's honor that.
I see Natalie shaking her head. So, without having to get too specific, Natalie, do you want to talk about some of the struggles or you've been having, or at least that you, or maybe your peers, or that, I, of course, as a faculty member, assume I know what the answers are going to be. So feel free to prove me wrong, but I'm kind of interested in some of the struggles, some of the things you've experienced that as a result of what we're going through right now with the social distancing, the college being closed, that you'd like to touch on.
There was definitely like an increase in anxiety in my life. I felt like there was too many things going on at once, despite me being home now with so much time. Now I had to dedicate time to when am I going to help my younger sister do her homework, and how am I going to get her to understand? What time am I going to do my own homework? And then also I work from home, so I have to worry about that too. And it was very overwhelming at first. Or at least I wasn't sure how it was all going to turn out. The first week where they were like, okay, school, no more school for the rest of the semester, I was like, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this will give me more time to study and do all this stuff. And then it became a month, and it became 2 months, and I really started missing going to school, taking the train, taking the bus, having that interaction. And I started getting anxious. I was like worried. My motivation, I just couldn't find motivation to do anything. And then when I got the text, I was like, okay, this sounds perfect. I could talk to other people about how I'm feeling. And I showed up, and it was exactly what I needed, and like more. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. I didn't really expect anything. but it was very accepting, and I could talk freely. I could talk about the opener, as Deema mentioned, or I could just talk about how I'm feeling. And it's really helpful, talking about your feelings and not being judged, being accepted.
Yeah, it's, sounds good. I think to myself like, wow, maybe I need one of these circles for me.
Come on over. Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, the things I key on, and I think that this is, a lot of people, smart people talk about, you hear it sometimes coming through in the media, is, and some of these ad campaigns, which on the face of them come off like the ABC afternoon special, but then, you realize, there's the kernel of truth is in there, which is that everything we're feeling and experiencing is normal. We're going, as you mentioned earlier on, we're all experiencing trauma. We're all trying to handle it in different ways. We're all feeling, overwhelmed for all the different things you talked about, and that's expected, and it's it's okay, as people would say, and that alone is very freeing because you don't feel like there's something wrong with you, right? That you're feeling this way, and you can't. Why can't I just handle this? What's the big deal? Now I'm not going to school. I should have more time, so I don't have to take the bus anymore. You know what I mean? But we find it's harder to motivate. I mean, I'm experiencing that myself, as your teachers are, believe it or not. So, but I think that's very powerful. I just want to take a quick station break. It's 4:30. You're watching LaGuardia Radio WLGR. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, and my guests, pull up my cheat sheet again just to keep myself honest, is Deema Bayrakdar, who is the director of the Women's Center and the LGBTQIA Safe Zone Hub in the Division of Student Affairs. And one of the students who's taking advantage of their services, Natalie Sanchez, who have both kindly agreed to be on the show and talk about this. Deema, I want to go back because you had mentioned a lot of folks who, faculty and staff who stepped forward and have volunteered. I'd like to do that again, but this time, let's talk about what each one is focusing on, if that's possible. Some of the folks that are leading these circles and some of the things that they're offering as part of the discussion. And by the way, were these people? Did you have to do some sort of training with them as far as how to do the circle, or did you just give them a list of rules, like listen without judging, that kind of thing? Don't give advice, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, this has been like a collaborative experiment, right? So I went in when the training really was just going over this template, right? Which really outlines like how circle practice works. There is a section on community agreements, and that actually was generated through the circle process. Like we did it together, me, the co-lead, the students, and so things like be open-minded. This is an inviting space. All things here are confidential. Things like be respectful. All voices are valid. This is a non-hierarchical process, which I think was really important for folks to hear. Like each person plays an equal role in the circle. You are each here, and we're holding space together. Things might get heavy, but we're here holding it. And so with the co-leads, they were awesome. They just rolled right with it. So for example, grief and recent loss, I'm working with Les Gallo-Silver, who has a background in counseling. So
I didn't know this. I mean, I've known Les for years, and I guess I know Les I think of him as for nursing. I think of that in the nursing program.
Yeah. No, but he's been a social worker for over 40 years, right? And so, and
his focus is what again?
Grief and recent loss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Plenty of that.
There is.
Right now.
That one, I would say have like maybe 1 to 2 students a week. That one's probably one of the smaller ones, but it feels important to offer it. Right?
It is. It's the issue. I think there is that people taking advantage of it. A lot of folks don't realize they need help with that process.
Right. And that one, I would say the opener is just more like, we're here. Like, tell us how this time could be most helpful for you. Right. Just a little bit more open-ended. Working really closely with the Wellness Center, so Frank and Regina. But stress and overwhelm, I'm partnering with Anna Mora from the Wellness Center, and the social isolation group. There are two individuals. Rachel Bosio from the English department has stepped in, and also Joseph Schick from the neurodiversity program, who has kind of experience with social isolation and anxiety. So that's been great. Let's see, the mindfulness and self-care, I'm working with John Persinen over in institutional.
Oh, yes, John.
Right. He has a background in meditation practices. So I'll add here that our closer is usually, if not every time, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, it's always been a meditation, a visualization, really just a way to let's quiet down the nervous system, right? We appreciate there's so much that's activating right now. So we want to leave on that note. Healthy eating and body image, Nurse Pat Jimenez from Health Services. And then, Mom Power with Lisa Silverman. I was doing First to Attend College with Adela Effendi over in CUNY Start, so ACE, and also David Housel and I partnered on nationality and immigration. But again, in the experimental fashion of things, was just paying attention to who is showing up where and how can we consolidate circle energy. Especially since there's a lot of overlap. I mean, pretty much students are showing up to just talk about what is happening, what's been tough, and to talk about what's been helpful as well.
Natalie, I'm just guessing now, but did the circle you participated in, was it about the stress piece? What circles did you take advantage of?
I believe support circle for social anxiety, isolation, and loneliness.
Oh, so the isolation one. All right, and who led that one again? Who was that one for you, Natalie? Do you remember your circle leader?
Deema and
Deema led it.
Well, it was Joseph and Rachel. Rachel Bosio and Joseph were present. Yeah.
So, I guess my question is, let's talk about where this is headed, because we're down to I think the last 3 weeks of school, right? Or at least I know, I'm just figuring out from my calendar. I have 2 classes, and then there's finals, not including reading day. And so obviously we're in that, and obviously the stress level is increasing as we move, because interestingly enough, I'm getting emails from students as we're doing this meeting, on my phone, basically asking me, Professor, I have this many points. How many points do I need? That kind of thing. But it's certainly, May is actually the most stressful month of the year in the academic calendar I've experienced, because between the rolling down, there's also a very active as far as offerings, not so much now, but now we have the other problem, which is the COVID-19 situation. So, the stress level is moving on, but you started talking a little bit about the next spring too. And so where are we headed with these offerings? And do you have some ideas about what you want to do next for the spring?
Yeah. So we'll continue until the end of session 1. So whatever, June 12th, I believe. And then we'll start up again June 22nd. And my thought is to offer, because, right now we're doing 8, but my thought is to bring it down maybe to 4, because there are, I think as long as we're offering something every day, the students who've been showing up consistently during session 1, those time slots will still be available during session 2. So we want to continue that. And I think I might just make them more open. Like these are, rather than theme-based, make it an open support circle. Like I said, I might have one that's, focused just for women, and then one for LGBTQ. But, and then the opener could just be a range of questions and I have to tell you this, I thought this was awesome. For the first time ever last week at Healthy Eating and Body Image, one student who's been with us from the beginning, he's like, Deema, I have an opener. I'm like, great. That's what we want, right? Like,
what do you mean an opener?
So he had the opener. The student, like usually I bring the opener. So the question,
what is the opener?
So the opener is how we start the circle. So for Healthy Eating and Body Image, it might be like, what's an example of like positive thinking that you experienced this past week? Or what part of your body feels the most alive? Or, something like that. Whereas this student showed up and he was like, Deema, I have a quote, I want to share with the group as an opener. And I'm like, brilliant, because typically in circle, like that's kind of the goal, right? To kind of rotate who does the opener. So it's not just me all the time. And that was,
or even self-perpetuating, right?
Yeah.
At some point where students are running these things with other students. Here's a question for you. So a student expresses a need. There's sometimes do folks suggest follow-ups with services through student affairs?
Yes, and I thank you for mentioning that. Part of our kind of review of template at the beginning of Circle is I always refer students to the Wellness Center and to their services, just to make it clear, like this is a space for like group support at any and things could get triggering in here. So at any point, if you are seeking more individualized support, definitely seek out the Wellness Center. And I have had students afterwards email me, or they'll send me like a private chat during the session where they are seeking additional services. And so that happened with recent loss and grief, actually. And I have been able to follow up that way.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you were talking, I'm again being kind of the knob that I am, not being vague. I didn't realize that, obviously the Women's Center, we think it's women taking advantage of it, but because it's LGBTQIA, there are obviously men taking advantage of the space as well, or male students, which is great. And we haven't talked so much. I mean, because I guess, do you see these two titles interweaved at this point, or are there things that the hub does, the safe zone does or offers that's external from the center, the Women's Center itself?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that right now, we were also offering digital drop-in support for students during this time. I think right now it is a bit of a broad stroke. I do think that I think that the two areas, there's overlap, but I think that the two areas also have distinct populations and purpose. And I think it's important to remember that and to recall the differences and recall the overlap. And so, we are going to have a more, I think I tried to have a circle that focused on kind of gender identity and sexual identity, and it just wasn't getting the kind of traction. But I do want to try something like that again during session 2. We are, I'm in the process of collaborating with the Women, Gender, and Sexuality program to have a lavender LaGuardia ceremony, a lavender graduation ceremony on June 19th. So you'll hear about that. So I'm excited about that. We've also been in touch with the archives recently, because as you probably know, they do a lot of LGBTQ.
They're doing a show.
Yeah.
In about a week. No, it's a week or 2 weeks. Actually, It's about maybe 3 weeks. They're going to be on to talk about the photography exhibition.
Right. So we wanted to kind of talk about how to like coordinate our efforts a little bit more, so it's all still relatively new, but I think it's important to distinguish like what makes the two areas unique, and also honoring how they overlap and figuring that out.
I want to bring Natalie back in. So I'm going to ask her a question. This is what they call formative assessment, where you actually ask a question about how things are going in real time rather than waiting for the end. Natalie, given what you've taken advantage of through the center, what are some of the things you would like to see maybe that more of, or maybe that hasn't been offered yet? I mean, you are a customer. So, in a sense, what would you like to see more of, or maybe something that hasn't been offered yet, that as somebody who takes advantage of these services?
I guess what I'd like to see more of is possibly making it like, instead of weekly, 2 times a week. I feel like sometimes I need a little extra, another session. And again, I wanted to be with other students. But like what Deema was saying, how maybe shortening those the range of topics and then making them twice a week or something along those lines, I think would be really helpful.
That's good. By the way, I didn't mention this. Another way that I worked with the center was my wife, who is a therapist and focuses on sexual trauma, came and spoke. But she would love you as a patient, because when you get somebody who wants to go to analysis 2 or 3 times a week, that's when the real growth happens. That's when the real, because you're right, once a week it keeps you going. But if you're taking advantage of something like that more than once a week, the payoff gets bigger. So that's good. I'm interested because so Professor Riccio has already read my mind. We're about a quarter hour away from the end of the show. So at this point, we start taking questions from the Twitch stream. So let's see I got to pull this up here because he does screen grabs. So here's a question. This is such a great resource! ! Thank you for the work you're doing and for sharing it with us. What have you found are common themes you see coming up in the circles, and what is some of the advice students find most helpful? Did we already touch on that, or?
Natalie, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to jump in?
I could definitely say that as a student myself, what I find most helpful and what I've learned from these circles is that it's okay to not be okay. It is okay if you're struggling and all of that. We're all going through a tough time, and it's a new experience for many of us. So it's easy to beat up on yourself, but also remember that it is okay, and also getting one little thing done at a time. The small successes, they'll often build up to a big one. So it's okay to get one thing done a day. Those count.
You're reading my mind, because I'm thinking of, that's what I go through, is I have big things, but if I could break them down into smaller steps, like, work on this assignment for class tomorrow. If I could just get that done, instead of the bigger stuff. That's good. Did you get that from us, or did you come up with that on your own?
I mean, that's what I've been learning, right, by attending these circles.
All right. Deema, did you want to chime in about that question at all?
I think I would just add to it just the normalization, the validation and the normalization, right? So I think it's helpful for folks in the circle to hear, like, I'm struggling with sleep too, right? Or I'm also like, the fridge is right there. Like, it's, it hasn't been easy getting 10,000 steps a day, or what, just to really, like, you really are not you're not alone in this. I have found to be really helpful. And I think Natalie touched on this, but, folks can get really hard on themselves, and they can feel like, I'm not, and they can kind of beat themselves up. And I think it's helpful just to, kind of just bring some awareness to that, and, like, okay, just how can you extend some kindness to yourself, right? Like, we've never been here before. This is what it looks like. So just being present with that. And what's been for me the most powerful as a listener is just hearing the ways in which the students are like listening to each other and offering that support to one another.
Right. Solving each other's or helping each other with their issues. Here's a question for you. So tomorrow we go back to face-to-face. It's hypothetical, right? So we go back to face-to-face. Is this something that you would continue to, I mean, would you, obviously you could offer the face-to-face option of this very same experience, but do you think the online component is something you would continue to perpetuate, work with, now that you also can offer the face-to-face? What do you think?
I think I would offer both. I think
Right.
There's something, and Natalie, let me know what your experience is like, but I think that there's something about the virtual that and people are in the comfort of their homes, that actually allows them to be a little bit more open and expressive and maybe even vulnerable. There's something about the screen, I don't know, where people, I feel like people are a little bit more disclosing than maybe they would be in person. At the same, I would want to offer it for that reason, but I also believe, the social connection, the face-to-face, the human interaction, like that matters, right? And as part of our innate wiring, we're wired to connect. So I would want to offer both.
What do you think, Natalie? If you had the opportunity to do face-to-face, or you also had the option of the online, what do you think you would? What option would you take advantage of, or both?
For me, because I've been attending the online ones, it's definitely helped me kind of build some confidence. I'm not usually the type to talk in class, and this has definitely helped. Nobody can see me. It's just my name, and so with these sessions, it would help me transition to a face-to-face type of setup. I would definitely attend both, and it would help me get myself out of my shell.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing because you do that. You're today on this show. You're pretty amazing at this. So when you tell me that you're shy and that you don't speak in class, I mean, obviously I believe you, and it's like this thing about faculty. We're always trying to figure out, like, how do we get people to engage? How do we get to? But at the same time, it's like it's. I also say, like, this kid's really good at this. You're really good at this. I can't believe that you aren't outspoken in your everyday life. We're almost out of time, so we got about 5 minutes. Any last things you want to touch on, or anybody you want to thank while we got the line open?
I guess, I mean, I want to thank all the students, really, for showing up. It's bold work, to show up with a bunch of strangers, not quite sure what you're stepping into. Like, I think it's commendable. And I mean, when I first started doing this, it's like, okay, the support circles are for the students, but in some ways, I wonder if it's for me too. Like, it's an opportunity for me to connect as well. So I just really want to thank the students, and I want to thank all the incredible co-leads who've really just been on this sort of wild ride with me. And, I also just, I'll pause there. There's one more thing I wanted to say, but I'll pause there for the gratitude. And thank you, Hugo, for having us on.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me here. This is a first, and it's a really good experience.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, because you were pitched to me. This show is pitched, and right now I'm at a loss to remember whose idea it was. Was it yours, Natalie? No, somebody contacted me. Who was it?
I think it was Karen. I think it was Karen Mulbauer. Maybe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Marketing and communications, maybe our friends over in marketing.
And who has marketed to us, because I don't know what happened. We had a show, and then she contacted me, and she said, forgot she was off. I guess she was offering to help us market, but she also had ideas for shows, and this was her idea. So Karen, thank you so much for this idea. I was going to ask one last question. When folks participate in the circles, do they share video or not? Or is it, do most people typically not share video?
It's a mix. I would say maybe I would say mostly do not show video. Maybe like 70% no video, 30% video. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because there's something about the anonymity that, like Natalie was saying, is freeing, a little bit freeing. You're not you brought that out in me when you said the phrase about they can't see me. Like in the classroom, they see you, right? You raise your hand, you stand up. And lucky you're not in my class, because I would make you stand in the front of the room when you were talking or presenting. But being able to have a certain degree of anonymity and just share your feelings, be heard without necessarily having to deal with all of the other factors of being seen. That's, I think, is a certain degree of it's freeing.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank the two of you for coming on this show and telling us all, telling the audience and everyone about the great work that's being done. It's really a great example of how, again, the college has been responsive to need and utilizing this great tool. And I think the students are better, without this, I don't want to think about what some of these students have gone through. So thank you for that work. And thank you, Natalie, for taking advantage of it, participating. I'm sure you must share good things in that room other people hear.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Oh, she's an excellent voice. Yeah.
I wish she had shared with us today. So, and thank you again, Karen Mulbar, for suggesting this exhibition for this show. And I would say, if you got some more ideas, feel free to pass them on. And feel free to come back. We could talk about this again in the summer, and as it morphs into and changes. But I just want to thank the two of you for coming on the show. So, if you've been watching today's show, my guests have been Deema Bayrakdar, who is the director of the Women's Center and the LGBTQIA Safe Zone Hub in the Division of Student Affairs. You can find them MB10, I believe, when we get terrestrial again. But for now, they're online. And one of the students who's been taking advantage of those services, Natalie Sanchez, who is a biology major and loves biology. And it'll make Thomas Honoranto very happy. And you've been watching What's Going On here on LaGuardia Radio, WLGR. I've been your host, Hugo Fernandez. Thanks for watching and listening. And Mr. Pope, take us out as we came in.